Imagine a scene from the deepest corners of ancient legend. A child, no older than 7, standing fearless against the raging sea. Towering waves crash around him as monstrous serpents rise from the depths, their scales glinting like dark jewels, their eyes burning with primordial fury. But this is no ordinary child, and this is no ordinary battle. With fists clenched and a fiery glint in his eyes, he doesn't retreat. Instead, he charges forward, a whirlwind of divine energy and raw power, tearing through the ocean's wrath as if it were mere mist. This is Nezha, one of Chinese mythology's most electrifying and paradoxical figures, a being whose very existence defies easy labels. He is both god and demon, rebel and redeemer, chaos and order intertwined in a single, unforgettable story. From the moment of his bizarre birth, emerging not as a helpless infant but as a fully formed ball of energy, cloaked in myth and mystery, Nezha's life was destined to upend the heavens and shake the foundations of the earthly realm. Here was a child deemed a demon by those who feared his otherworldly nature, yet destined to become one of China's most revered divine protectors. His tale is not just one of conquests and cosmic battles. It is a deeply human story of defiance, transformation, and the search for identity. It's about what happens when uncontrollable power is placed in the hands of youth, and how that power can either destroy worlds or save them. Nezha's journey forces us to ask timeless questions. Can true strength emerge from rebellion? Can darkness give birth to light? Through this video, we'll unravel the epic layers of Nezha's legacy, a saga woven with magic, tragedy, redemption, and larger-than-life clashes that resonate across centuries. We'll explore his complicated relationships with gods and mortals, his breathtaking fights against dragon kings and sea monsters, and the profound ways his story continues to influence culture, spirituality, and even modern pop imagination. This isn't just a myth, it's a mirror reflecting our own struggles with power, purpose, and belonging. So settle in and open your mind to one of history's most thrilling divine dramas. The story of Nezha is about to unfold, and it promises to forever change how you see the line between monster and hero. To fully grasp the magnitude of Nezha's story, we must first journey back through time to the spiritual and cultural landscape that gave birth to him. His legend is not a single, static tale, but a living narrative that evolved across dynasties, absorbing the beliefs and anxieties of each era. Nezha's origins are deeply rooted in Chinese folk religion, where local deities and nature spirits held sway over the daily lives of the people. In these earliest whispers of his myth, he was often venerated as a protector god, a divine child with the power to subdue malevolent forces and bring safety to communities. This foundational role as a guardian never truly left him, even as his character grew infinitely more complex. The profound transformation of Nezha's identity began during the Tang dynasty, a golden age of cultural exchange where Buddhism flourished as it traveled along the Silk Road. It is here that scholars often trace the strongest Buddhist influences on his character. His story begins to mirror elements of the tale of Nalakuvara, a divine youth and son of the Dhritarashtra, a guardian king in Buddhist scripture. Like Nezha, this figure was a powerful and sometimes willful protector. This cross-cultural assimilation enriched Nezha's narrative, infusing it with new themes of spiritual enlightenment and karmic consequence, layering atop his existing folkloric persona. However, it was during the Ming dynasty that Nezha's legend was crystallized into the epic form we recognize today, thanks largely to one monumental work of literature, the 16th century novel Fengshen Yani, or Investiture of the Gods. This sprawling fictional account of the fall of the Shang dynasty and the rise of the Zhou dynasty is a cornerstone of Chinese mythology, populating its cosmic war with a vast pantheon of gods, immortals, and demons. Within this grand tapestry, Nezha's story is given its most detailed and dramatic treatment. The novel delves into the specifics of his mystical birth from a ball of flesh, his deadly confrontation with the Dragon King's son, his subsequent suicide to spare his family and community from heavenly wrath, and his triumphant resurrection from a lotus blossom to aid the righteous Zhu cause. It is within Fengshen Yanni that the central, heartbreaking tension of his character is most powerfully explored, the conflict between fierce rebellion and profound filial piety. Nezha's defiant nature constantly brings him into direct opposition with his father, General Jing, creating a struggle that resonated deeply with Confucian values emphasizing respect for one's parents. His ultimate act of self-sacrifice, returning his flesh to his mother and bones to his father, is a shocking yet paradoxically filial gesture, an attempt to sever the parental debt his actions have incurred. This act transforms him from a mere problem child into a tragic hero, forging his path to becoming a sanctioned god. Through this evolution, Nezha came to embody a unique duality in the Chinese spiritual consciousness. He is both the ultimate rebel, challenging even the highest heavens, and a key agent of divine intervention, working to restore cosmic order. He represents the untamable chaos of raw power, yet also the disciplined strength that can be harnessed for protection and justice. His enduring popularity is a testament to this complexity, offering a figure who mirrors the very human struggles between independence and duty, between destructive impulse and the desire for redemption. To understand the storm that was Nezha, we must first look to the calm, ordered world he was born into, a world embodied by his parents. His father, Jing, was no ordinary mortal. A formidable military commander in life, his prowess and virtue earned him a profound promotion after death. He ascended to become a high-ranking god in the celestial bureaucracy, eventually known as the pagoda-bearing heavenly king. This title is far more than just a colorful name. It represents the very essence of his divine role and his relationship with his son. The pagoda itself was a gift from the highest deity, the Jade Emperor, but its purpose was deeply personal. It was designed specifically to subdue and control Nezha, a permanent divine solution to a domestic problem. Jing is the personification of order, duty, and strict adherence to heavenly law. He operates within a rigid hierarchy where every action has a consequence and every rebellion must be quelled to maintain cosmic balance. As a father, he represents absolute patriarchal authority, the kind that expects obedience above all else. His constant fear is that his son's uncontrollable nature will not only bring shame upon their family but invoke the wrath of the entire heavenly court, dismantling everything he has worked to build. In stark contrast stands Nezha's mother, Lady Yin. While her husband navigates the austere halls of heaven, Lady Yin remains more connected to the earthly, the human, and the emotional. Her significance is profound, as she is the one who actually gives birth to this miraculous child after a highly unusual pregnancy that lasts for 3 years and 6 months. When the time finally comes, she does not deliver a baby but a large, mysterious ball of flesh. This shocking event immediately marks the child as something otherworldly, something demonic in the eyes of a society that values normalcy and tradition. While Jing sees only a monstrous omen, Lady Yin's reaction is often portrayed as a mixture of fear and protective instinct. She is the nurturing force, the gentle heart caught between a husband who demands strict control and a son whose very being defies it. Her love for Nezha is unconditional, yet she is largely powerless within the patriarchal structure that governs both her family and the cosmos. She embodies the tension between familial love and societal expectation, and her silent suffering foreshadows the tragic conflict to come. This parental dynamic creates the perfect pressure cooker for Nezha's rebellious spirit to ignite. He is not simply a naturally disobedient child. He is a force of primordial chaos born into a household of absolute order. From his first breath, he is a paradox that his father's world cannot accommodate. Li Jing's rigidness and constant attempts to constrain his son's power only serve as a catalyst fueling Nezha's defiance. Every act of paternal disapproval reinforces Nezha's identity as an outsider in his own home. Meanwhile, Lady Yin's softer, more compassionate love offers solace but cannot provide a solution, leaving Nezha feeling misunderstood from all sides. Their complicated ties are the crucible in which his destiny is forged, setting him on an inevitable collision course with authority that would escalate from a simple family disagreement into a war that shook the very foundations of the oceans and the heavens themselves. For 3 long years and 6 months, Lady Yin carried her unborn child, a pregnancy that stretched far beyond the natural course and became a source of deepening anxiety and local gossip. This was not a time of joyful anticipation but of growing dread, a period where each passing day marked a further deviation from the natural order. Then, one evening, the household was thrown into chaos not by the cry of a newborn, but by a brilliant, otherworldly radiance emanating from Lady Yin's chambers. The moment of birth had arrived, but what emerged was a sight that shattered all expectations, a large, pulsating ball of flesh, glowing with an unearthly inner light. General Li Jing, a man of war and strict rationality, was summoned to the scene. He took one look at this bizarre, formless mass and saw not a miracle but a monstrous omen. In his mind, this was a demonic manifestation, a harbinger of terrible misfortune that threatened his family's honor and their very safety. Drawing his sword, a tool meant for battling earthly foes, he acted on sheer instinct and terror, slashing at the mysterious orb. The moment his blade made contact, the ball split open not with blood, but with a burst of pure, radiant energy. From within that energy stepped forth a child, but he was unlike any infant ever seen. He was not small or helpless, he was a fully formed young boy, glowing with health and vitality. Even more astonishing, he was already armed and armored, with a golden bracelet gleaming on each wrist and a vibrant red sash, known as the universe ring, wrapped around his shoulders. His eyes were bright and aware, taking in the world with a calm, preternatural intelligence. He did not cry, he simply stood there, a perfect miniature warrior born directly into the world. This was the divine side of his nature on full, immediate display, a protector manifested, already equipped for the battles to come. Yet to his family and the society they lived in, this was anything but a blessing. His miraculous entrance was interpreted as deeply unnatural and profoundly threatening. In a culture that placed immense value on harmony, tradition, and filial piety, a child who bypassed infancy entirely was a rejection of the natural dependency between parent and child. He entered the world independent, powerful, and outside of societal norms. His pre-equipped weapons were not seen as divine gifts but as a sign of inherent violence and rebellion. The very gifts that marked him as a chosen guardian were the same traits that marked him as a demon in his father's eyes. This birth was not a beginning but a rupture, an event that immediately cast Nezha in the role of an outsider within his own home. From his first breath, he was a puzzle and a peril, a boy whose destiny was written in a language of power his own father could not read, setting the stage for a conflict that was cosmic in scale yet heartbreakingly intimate in its origins. While his birth was a shock, the days that followed proved Nezha was no ordinary child. He did not need to learn to speak or walk. He emerged from the ball of flesh with those abilities fully intact, his mind already sharp and his body already coordinated. This immediate maturity was both a wonder and a profound disturbance. He bypassed the stage of being a cradled infant, a phase that normally builds bonds of dependency and nurturing between parent and child. Instead, he was instantly a small, self-possessed individual, ready to explore the world on his own terms and with his own formidable power. His divine nature was most vividly expressed through his connection to the mystical weapons he was born with. The golden bracelets on his wrists were known as the universe rings, and the red sash draped around his shoulders was the red Armillary sash. These were not mere ornaments, they were extensions of his own celestial energy, tools of immense power that he understood instinctively. He could command the rings to fly through the air, striking targets with pinpoint accuracy or defending him from any attack. The sash, seemingly a simple piece of cloth, could coil around opponents with the strength of a mighty serpent, binding gods or demons with equal ease. He mastered these artifacts not through training but through an innate, natural fluency, as if he were simply remembering how to use a part of himself he had always possessed. This prodigious power inevitably led to his first brushes with the supernatural world that existed just beyond mortal sight. The local river spirit, a deity known for his temper and demands for tribute, once attempted to intimidate the young boy. Nezha, with the fearless curiosity of a child who has never known defeat, did not cower. He simply unleashed one of his universe rings, sending the spirit fleeing back to its watery domain with a newfound and very healthy respect for the general's strange son. On another occasion, a mischievous demon that had been plaguing the village outskirts made the mistake of crossing his path. Nezha confronted it not with fear, but with the casual confidence of someone swatting a fly, using his red armillary sash to effortlessly subdue the creature and send it packing. These early exploits were not acts of malice, but the simple, unthinking actions of a boy testing his abilities on the world around him. He saw a problem and solved it with the tools at his disposal, utterly unaware of the political and cosmic protocols he was violating. To the villagers, these acts were miracles, and whispers began to spread of a divine protector living among them. They saw a hero in the making, a champion who could stand against the chaotic forces that threatened their fragile lives. But within the walls of his own home, each act of power was viewed through a very different lens. For General Jing, every demon subdued and every spirit challenged was not a victory, but a potential catastrophe. In the highly structured celestial bureaucracy, every local deity and spirit was a recognized official and part of a complex divine order. A child arbitrarily challenging these beings was not enforcing justice. He was disrupting the delicate balance of heaven itself, inviting retribution that could fall upon his entire family and community. Nezha's fearless innocence and his father's rigid adherence to protocol were on a direct collision course, setting the stage for a confrontation that would prove far more fateful than any skirmish with a local demon. While Nezha's innate power was immense, it was his master, the immortal sage Taiyi Zhenren, who recognized that such raw potential required both discipline and tools worthy of its magnitude. Seeing the divine spark within the rebellious child, Taiyi took Nezha under his wing, not to suppress his nature but to channel it. It was from this profound teacher-student bond that Nezha received the legendary artifacts that would become synonymous with his identity, the universe ring and the red armillary sash. These were not mere weapons, they were extensions of cosmic law, perfectly suited to the god-child who would enforce it. The universe ring, or Kwan, is a masterpiece of celestial engineering. Its name itself reveals its immense scope. Kwan translates to heaven and earth, representing the entire cosmos. Crafted from a unique, unbreakable golden alloy, the ring appears deceptively simple, yet it operates on principles that defy mortal understanding. It responds not to physical force but to its wielder's will and spiritual energy. Nezha could command it to fly at incredible speeds, striking a target with the force of a meteor or defending him by creating an impenetrable barrier. Its true power lay in its versatility. It could change size at a moment's notice, expanding to ensnare a colossal sea beast or shrinking to a bracelet on his wrist. Mythologically, the ring symbolizes unbreakable strength and the cyclical nature of the cosmos, a tool of containment and decisive impact. In Nezha's hands, it became the ultimate expression of direct, unambiguous power, a declaration that his will could shape reality itself. If the universe ring was the blunt instrument, the red armillary sash or Ling was the embodiment of cunning control. This vibrant crimson cloth was far more than a piece of finery. Woven from the threads of celestial bodies and dyed in the essence of the primordial sun, the sash possessed a life and intelligence of its own. Nezha could throw it toward an enemy, and it would snake through the air with a purpose all its own, coiling around its target with inescapable precision. It could bind deities, trap demons, and even restrain the most powerful magical energies, rendering the most formidable foe completely helpless. Its name, Ling, evokes the Armillary sphere, an ancient astronomical instrument that maps the heavens. This is the key to its symbolic role. It represents divine order, the celestial machinery that keeps the stars in their courses and chaos at bay. The sash didn't destroy, it captured and neutralized, making it the perfect tool for a protector whose duty was to subdue threats without unnecessary carnage, restoring balance rather than creating void. Together, these artifacts created a perfect combat synergy that defined Nezha's approach to battle. The universe ring would often initiate the confrontation, a stunning, powerful blow meant to disorient and overwhelm. Then, in the moment of confusion, the red armillary sash would fly out, ensnaring the enemy and decisively ending the conflict. This 1-2 combination allowed Nezha to triumph over opponents who were physically stronger or magically superior, showcasing a tactical mind that worked in concert with his raw power. These weapons elevated him from a merely powerful youth to a sanctioned divine marshal, a recognized authority whose tools were as much badges of office as they were instruments of war. They were gifts that acknowledged his destiny, transforming the demon child feared by his father into the god hero who would stand between heaven, earth, and the raging seas. While the universe ring and red armillary sash provided Nezha with unparalleled defensive and binding capabilities, his true offensive might was channeled through an instrument of pure, focused destruction, the fire-tipped spear. This was no ordinary lance, it was a conduit for celestial flame, a weapon forged in the heart of a divine furnace by his master, Tei Zhenren, specifically to match the boy's untamable spirit. The spear's name, Huozhong Qiang, translates directly to fire-piercing spear, and it lived up to every syllable of that fearsome title. Crafted from a mysterious, dark metal that could withstand unimaginable heat, its blade was perpetually wreathed in ethereal fire that burned without consuming its form. This was not the simple fire of a mortal forge. It was elemental fire capable of searing through magical defenses, purifying corrupt energies, and incinerating demonic essences with a single, precise thrust. In combat, the spear became an extension of Nezha's own fiery will. He wielded it with a breathtaking grace that belied its deadly nature, a whirlwind of motion where the flaming point traced arcs of light through the air. The weapon perfectly complemented his aggressive, direct style, allowing him to meet colossal opponents head-on, its enchanted flames ensuring that no matter how mighty the foe, they would feel the searing kiss of divine retribution. Yet, a weapon of such immense power required a delivery system as dynamic as its wielder. For all his strength, Nezha needed the ability to dictate the terms of engagement, to strike from any angle and vanish before a counterblow could land. This need for supreme mobility was answered by perhaps the most iconic items in his arsenal, the wind-fire wheels, known as Feng Huo Lun. These were not wheels in any conventional sense but a pair of mystical golden hoops that attached to his feet, each inscribed with ancient talismans controlling the elements of wind and fire. When activated, they did not merely roll, they came alive. Ferocious flames erupted from their rims, creating a roaring inferno that propelled him forward, while simultaneous gales of hurricane-force wind swirled around his feet, lifting him effortlessly into the air. The result was not simple flight, but a form of lightning-fast, omnidirectional traversal that defied physics. He could skate across the surface of the ocean, tear through the clouds, or maneuver through the cramped corridors of a mountain pass with equal ease, leaving twin trails of fire and swirling wind in his wake. The wind-fire wheels granted him god-like speed and aerial dominance, turning the entire battlefield into his personal domain. Together, this arsenal created a devastatingly synergistic combat style that was as terrifying as it was effective. The windfire wheels provided the unmatched mobility, allowing Nezha to close vast distances in the blink of an eye or evade a giant's crushing blow with impossible agility. This constant, unpredictable motion made him an elusive phantom, a blur of fire and wind that could never be pinned down. Then, in the moment of opportunity created by his speed, the fire-tipped spear would strike with the concentrated force of a meteor. He could plunge from the sky like a raptor, the spear point leading a comet's tail of flame, or materialize behind an opponent for a crippling thrust before they even realized he had moved. This combination defined the essence of Nezha as a warrior, agile, relentless, and overwhelmingly powerful. He was not a static brawler who traded blows. He was a celestial blitzkrieg, a storm of fire and motion that overwhelmed adversaries through sheer speed, precision, and the devastating elemental force he commanded. These tools transformed him from a powerful child into a true battlefield sovereign, a deity whose very presence meant the inevitable and swift triumph of divine order over chaos. It was a sweltering summer day, a time when even the air seemed to stand still under the oppressive heat. Seeking relief, the young Nezha found himself at the shores of the East Sea, a vast, shimmering expanse that seemed to promise cool tranquility. With the impulsive enthusiasm of a child, he stripped off his magical artifacts, the universe rings, his red armillary sash, and plunged into the refreshing water. But in his divine innocence, Nezha failed to comprehend the sheer magnitude of his own power. The very water around him began to churn and boil from his innate celestial energy, and as he playfully splashed about with his red armillary sash, he sent waves of disruptive force rippling through the ocean's depths. To him, it was merely a bath. To the inhabitants of the underwater kingdom below, it was nothing short of a cataclysmic earthquake shaking the very pillars of their crystalline palace. Deep within that opulent palace, the disturbance was felt as a profound insult. The ruler of this domain was none other than Guang, the Dragon King of the East Sea, a primordial deity of immense power and even greater pride. His court, a magnificent hall of coral and pearl, trembled violently, sending jade artifacts crashing to the floor and alarming the entire court. Interpreting this as a deliberate act of aggression, the Dragon King commanded his third son, the young Prince Bing, to investigate the surface and punish whatever insolent mortal or demon was daring to assault his kingdom. Bing was no minor spirit. He was a powerful dragon in his own right, a noble and disciplined warrior trained from birth to uphold the dignity and law of the aquatic realm. He ascended from the depths, transforming into a handsome, armored youth as he broke the surface, his expression a mask of righteous indignation. What he found was not a monstrous invader, but a child seemingly at play. The two youths faced each other, one the epitome of celestial order and duty, the other a being of raw, untamed power. Bing, following his father's command and the protocols of his station, demanded to know who Nezha was and by what right he disturbed the peace of the East Sea. He expected deference, an apology, perhaps even fear. What he received was Nezha's characteristic bluntness. Nezha, seeing only another entity trying to dictate his actions, reacted not with contrition but with defiance. He dismissed Bing's authority, boasting of his own power and lineage in a way that sounded not like a formal introduction but a taunt. The conversation, fraught with pride on both sides, spiraled rapidly into hostility. Bing, duty-bound to subdue this insolent child, readied his own weapons. Nezha, seeing a threat, reached for his universe rings. The fight was as swift as it was tragic. Bing was a skilled and powerful combatant, a prince of the sea, but he was utterly unprepared for the hurricane of divine force that was Nezha. Nezha did not fight with strategy or honor. He fought with the unrestrained instinct of a natural force. A universe ring, thrown with casual, world-shattering power, struck Bing with the force of a mountain. the Dragon Prince was mortally wounded, and in a final, horrific revelation of his true nature, his body reverted to its original draconic form, collapsing upon the waves. But Nezha, in a moment that reveals both his childish curiosity and his profound lack of understanding regarding life, death, and consequence, saw not a fallen prince but a prize. Remembering his father, General Jing, often complained of lacking a sturdy belt, Nezha proceeded to pull the dragon's sinew from its spine, intending to fashion a gift for the very father whose wrath he was about to incur. This act, more than the killing itself, was the ultimate desecration. It transformed a conflict from a regrettable battle into an unforgivable sacrilege. When the Dragon King Wukong learned of his son's death and the grotesque fate of his body, his grief erupted into a wrath that promised to drown the world. Nezha had not merely killed a minor official, he had slain a celestial prince and heir, a key figure in the divine bureaucracy that governed rainfall and the waters essential for all life on Earth. More than that, he had insulted the entire dragon clan to its core. This was no longer a simple matter of a child's mistake. It was an act that threatened to sever the covenant between heaven, earth, and sea. Wukong's vow of vengeance was not just a father's rage, but the fury of nature itself, poised to unleash floods and droughts upon the mortal world unless Nezha and his entire family were delivered up for divine punishment. In a single afternoon of impulsive play, Nezha had successfully ignited a celestial crisis, proving that his power was indeed a double-edged sword capable of miraculous protection, but also of unraveling the very fabric of the cosmic order. This single act of desecration, pulling the sinew from the fallen prince, was the spark that lit an inferno of divine wrath. Nezha, with the simplistic logic of a child, believed he had found a clever solution to a problem, a way to turn a conflict into a gift for his father. He could not possibly comprehend that in the eyes of heaven and the deep sea, he had committed a crime so profound it shattered all protocols of war and respect. Back in his palace of crystal and pearl, the Dragon King Wukong felt the moment his son's life was extinguished a seismic crack in the very foundation of his power. When the terrible news arrived, confirmed by his trembling scouts who witnessed the entire grotesque spectacle, his grief was not a quiet, private sorrow. It was a cataclysm. The ocean floor trembled, and the waters of the East Sea grew dark and turbulent as the king's anguish radiated outwards. Bing was not merely a son, he was a prince of the realm, a key administrator in the celestial bureaucracy tasked with managing the rains and waters for an entire region. His death was not a personal tragedy alone, it was an act of insurrection against the natural order itself. Driven by a pain that was both paternal and imperial, Wukong's sorrow quickly crystallized into a cold, terrifying rage. He would not seek a mortal trial or a simple apology. The offense demanded a response on a cosmic scale. Transforming from his majestic draconic form into the regal guise of a human official, he ascended from the depths and stormed directly into the general's household. He confronted Jing not as one father to another, but as an emperor delivering an ultimatum to a subject. His voice, thundering with the power of the deep, accused Nezha of murder and sacrilege, and he held Jing personally responsible for the actions of his demon offspring. The threat he issued was not an empty one. He swore that if justice was not served, if Nezha was not delivered for divine punishment, he would gather his 3 brothers, the dragon kings of the other 3 seas, and together they would unleash a deluge of biblical proportions. They would drown Chen Tang Pass and every soul within it, turning Jing's entire domain into a watery grave. This was no longer a dispute between 2 youths. It was an act of war declared by the elemental forces of nature against the mortal world. But Wukong was also a being of law and order despite his rage. He knew that such a cataclysmic act required sanction from the highest authority to avoid his own punishment. Leaving the terrified Jing to contemplate the ruin of everything he had built, the Dragon King turned his wrath toward the heavens themselves. he mounted his clouds and journeyed to the celestial court of the Jade Emperor, the supreme ruler of all gods and the universe. There, in the magnificent, orderly silence of the heavenly throne room, the King of the Sea presented his case. He laid out the facts of his son's murder, the theft of his tendon, and the insolence of the child Nezha. He pleaded not just for vengeance, but for official permission to execute his terrible plan, to wield the weather itself as a weapon of justice. He framed it as a necessary action to uphold the dignity of the celestial bureaucracy and to serve as a stark warning to any who would dare challenge its divine representatives. In doing so, he successfully elevated a personal vendetta into a matter of heavenly state, tying the fate of Nezha and his family directly to the decrees of the highest power in existence. The stakes were no longer about one boy's mistake. They were about the stability of the cosmos and the terrifying price of defiance. Confronted with the absolute and terrifying reality of the Dragon King's vengeance, Nezha stood at a precipice that demanded a decision far beyond his years. The joyous, impulsive child who had merely hours before been playing in the sea was gone, replaced by a being who finally understood the devastating weight of his own power. His father's household was paralyzed by fear, and the entire community of Chentang Pass stood on the brink of annihilation for his crime. The celestial machinery he had so carelessly disrupted was now poised to crush everyone and everything he knew. In this moment of profound crisis, the two warring halves of his nature, the rebellious demon and the nascent god, synthesized into a single, shocking resolution. He would not flee, and he would not let his parents or his people pay for his mistake. Instead, he would perform an act of such extreme filial piety that it would become legendary, an act that simultaneously honored and utterly rejected the Confucian traditions his father embodied. He approached his parents, his small frame radiating a terrifying calm. To his weeping mother, Lady Yin, he offered words of comfort and a promise to set things right. To his furious and fearful father, General Li Jing, he made a declaration that must have sounded like madness. He stated that he would sever the debt of life he owed them, the fundamental obligation that bound a child to their parents. "You gave me this body," he essentially said, "and with it I have brought you ruin, therefore I will give it back." This was not a metaphor or a spiritual concept, it was a literal, horrifying plan. In the ultimate act of taking responsibility, Nezha chose to dismantle his own physical form. With a force of will that could only be divine, he began the process of unmaking himself. He returned his flesh to his mother, the one who had nurtured and carried him, symbolizing the physical life she had gifted him. He returned his bones to his father, the patriarch from whom he had inherited his lineage and his structural place in the world. This gruesome act of self-sacrifice was a paradox written in blood and spirit. On one hand, it was the epitome of filial piety, a concept central to Confucian ethics. By returning the physical components of his being, he was theoretically repaying the life debt, freeing his parents from any spiritual responsibility for his actions and thus, in the stark logic of the cosmos, nullifying the Dragon King's claim against them. He was using the system's own rules to defeat it, yet, on the other hand, the act was one of ultimate defiance. It was a total rejection of the path his father had laid out for him, a life of subdued obedience within the celestial hierarchy. By choosing death on his own terms, Nezha seized control of his own narrative for the first and last time. He transformed himself from a problem his father had to manage into a solution his father could never have conceived. He didn't submit to heaven's judgment, he delivered his own, more severe sentence. His physical body disintegrated, but his spirit, his essential self, did not pass on to the underworld. Unbound by flesh and freed from the earthly ties of family debt, his consciousness remained a powerful but disembodied will. It was a state of pure potential, a blank slate. This was not an end, but a necessary death, a chrysalis stage. His master, the compassionate and foresighted Tei Zhenren, had not abandoned him. recognizing the profound sacrifice and the purity of intent behind it, the immortal sage intervened. He gathered lotus flowers and leaves, plants deeply symbolic in Buddhism and Taoism for their purity, rising unsullied from muddy water, representing enlightenment and rebirth. From these sacred materials, Tei Zhenren crafted a new body for Nezha's spirit, a form far superior to his original mortal coil. This lotus body was ethereal, resistant to the weaknesses of flesh and the soul-damaging effects of most dark magic. It was a body worthy of a true god, not a demon child. In this magnificent new form, Nezha was reborn, not as a son indebted to his parents, but as a sanctioned divine warrior, ready to be deployed in the cosmic war to come. His radical act of self-undoing had, paradoxically, become the very thing that constructed his eternal identity. The severing of his own flesh and bones was an end, but for a being like Nezha, it was also a beginning, a necessary dissolution that paved the way for a far more spectacular rebirth. His spirit, now untethered from the mortal coil and the heavy debts it carried, did not drift aimlessly into the afterlife. Instead, it lingered, a potent and conscious energy waiting for the one being who had always seen his true potential. That intervention came from his master, the compassionate and supremely powerful Taoist immortal Tei Zhenren. Witnessing the tragedy unfold from his celestial abode, Tei did not see a catastrophe but a crucial transformation in progress. He recognized that the old Nezha, the boy bound by human limitations and paternal conflict, had to die for the god hero to be born. His act of self-sacrifice had purified his spirit, making him a perfect vessel for a new form of existence. With profound purpose, Tei Zhenren descended to the earthly plane, gathering the essential energy of his disciple. He then embarked on a process that was part divine art and part profound spiritual alchemy. He sought not common materials like clay or metal, but something far more symbolically potent, the sacred lotus plant. In the traditions of Taoism and Buddhism, the lotus holds immense significance. It is a flower that roots itself in the muddy, murky depths of a pond, yet it grows upward through the impure water to bloom pristinely on the surface, untouched by the filth from which it emerged. It is the ultimate symbol of purity, enlightenment, and rebirth, a perfect metaphor for Nezha's own journey from a life mired in conflict and perceived demonism to a state of divine clarity. Tei Zhenren carefully selected specific parts of the plant, each chosen for its symbolic and functional properties. From the sturdy roots, he fashioned the structural foundation of Nezha's new skeleton, granting him a form of unwavering stability and resilience. With the vibrant, luminous petals, he crafted the outer body, creating a visage that was both strikingly beautiful and eternally youthful. The leaves were woven into his essence, representing the continuous growth and connection to the natural world he was now sworn to protect. When the final incantation was spoken and the last surge of celestial energy was channeled into this botanical form, Nezha opened his eyes once more. This new body was not a mere replication of his old one. It was a superior vessel in every conceivable way. Crafted from spiritual botanicals rather than corruptible flesh, it was inherently immune to the weaknesses of mortality. It felt no pain, could not age, and most importantly, was impervious to soul-based attacks and dark magic that targeted the spirit. He was now a being of order, a literal instrument of cosmic balance. Yet, this magnificent rebirth came with a profound and often overlooked cost. The lotus, for all its purity, is not a creature of passion or warmth. In constructing this new body, Tei had created a perfect warrior, but in doing so, he had necessarily sanded away some of the very human edges that defined Nezha's original character. The hot-headed, impulsive, and emotionally volatile child was gone. In his place stood a cool, collected, and formidably focused deity. The deep, messy emotional connections to his family, particularly his father, were severed as completely as his physical ties. His primary driver was no longer personal emotion, be it joy, anger, or the desperate need for approval, but a clear, unwavering sense of purpose. He was emotionally detached, not out of coldness, but because his very composition was now aligned with the dispassionate mechanics of the celestial order he served. This Nezha was less a son and more a force of nature, a divine official whose past life was a story he had learned rather than a memory he felt. He was reborn not for himself, but for the coming war, a purpose-built weapon finally ready to be deployed in the grand cosmic conflict that would decide the fate of dynasties and gods. This new body was an instrument of divine will, a vessel rebuilt for a singular purpose. Crafted from the sacred lotus, Nezha's resurrected form granted him powers far beyond his original incarnation. Yet it also imposed profound and poignant limitations that would forever define his existence as a celestial guardian. His physical strength was now truly superhuman, allowing him to contend with the mightiest demon kings and celestial beasts. The lotus body, unburdened by the limitations of flesh and bone, was also impervious to nearly all conventional weapons. Swords would shatter against his skin, arrows would fall away uselessly, and most forms of dark or soul-based magic simply washed over him without effect, leaving him a nigh invulnerable bastion on the battlefield. This resilience was his greatest defensive attribute, a permanent shield that allowed him to charge into the heart of any conflict without fear of physical harm. His most visually spectacular ability, however, was the power to manifest multiple sets of arms, each one brandishing a different celestial weapon. This was not a mere party trick, it was the ultimate expression of his role as a multitasking divine marshal. In the heat of a chaotic battle against hordes of demonic forces, Nezha could become a one-man army. With a thought, 3 heads and 6 arms would sprout from his form, each pair of hands simultaneously wielding his universe ring, his fire-tipped spear, and his red armillary sash. This terrifying and awe-inspiring visage allowed him to attack, defend, and bind opponents all at once, operating with the coordinated efficiency of an entire battalion. It was the perfect fusion of his raw power and his master's strategic mind, a form that embodied total war and absolute control over the battlefield. Yet, for all its divine engineering, this perfect body harbored a critical, almost poetic flaw. The very material that made him so resilient, the sacred lotus plant, was also highly susceptible to fire. While his form could deflect steel and magic, intense heat and flame could cause it to wilt, scorch, and lose its potency. This vulnerability was a stark reminder that his rebirth was not into a state of omnipotence, but into a new form with its own specific rules and weaknesses. He was no longer a creature of flesh that could bleed, but a botanical construct that could burn. This meant that adversaries wielding fire-based magic or weapons became his most dangerous foes, forcing the otherwise fearless warrior to exercise caution and strategy where he would normally rely on brute force. It was a humbling constraint for a being of such immense power, a chink in his celestial armor that kept him grounded in the reality of combat. Perhaps the most profound limitation, however, was not physical but emotional. The process of being reborn from the lotus had a sterilizing effect on his spirit. The hot-headed, impulsive, and passionately emotional child was gone. In his place was a cooler, more detached deity, a being whose primary driver was duty and cosmic balance rather than personal feeling. This emotional distance granted him a clarity of purpose in battle, but it also meant a struggle to connect with the very human emotions he was once defined by: the fierce love for his mother, the burning need for his father's approval, the unbridled joy and rage of his youth. He operated with a serene efficiency that could appear cold or robotic, a far cry from the rebellious spirit who once charged into the sea for a playful swim. This internal struggle adds a deeply tragic layer to his heroism. He saved the world, but at the cost of a part of his own vibrant humanity. He became the perfect protector, yet in achieving that perfection, he lost the very imperfections that made his story so compellingly human. His greatest strength became his most poignant sacrifice, forever caught between the god he was designed to be and the boy he could never be again. Reborn in a body of lotus and spirit, Nezha awoke with a clarity of purpose that his previous life had lacked, yet also with a profound emotional detachment. His mind was no longer clouded by the fiery temper of a child. Instead, he saw the world and his place in it with the cold precision of a celestial instrument. He understood his duty was to join the righteous Zhu cause in the cosmic war detailed in the Investiture of the gods, and he accepted this destiny without question. Yet, this newfound focus did not erase the past. The memory of his father's actions, the constant rejection, the burning fear in Jing's eyes when Guang arrived, and the terrible pressure that had forced Nezha to tear his own body apart remained etched into his consciousness not as a raw wound, but as an unresolved equation in need of a solution. He had saved his father from the Dragon King's wrath, but the man who had given him life had shown him nothing but fear and condemnation in return. In the dispassionate logic of his lotus mind, this imbalance demanded correction. His first act in his new form was not to seek out his parents for a tearful reunion, but to visit his mother, Lady Yin, in a dream. He appeared to her not as a terrifying specter, but as the son she remembered, offering her comfort and assuring her of his well-being. He asked for one simple thing, that she secretly build a small spirit shrine in a remote location, a place where he could receive the incense and prayers of devotees. This, he explained, would allow his spirit to gather strength and fully complete his resurrection. Moved by a mother's enduring love and guilt, Lady Yin agreed. She arranged for a temple to be constructed in a hidden mountain pass, and soon the locals, learning of the miraculous deeds of the young god, began to worship there. With every stick of incense burned and every prayer uttered, Nezha's power grew, his divine presence solidifying with the faith of the people. This clandestine worship could not remain hidden forever. The smoke of devotion has a way of drawing attention in the celestial realms. General Jing, now a god himself patrolling the heavens, stumbled upon the thriving shrine during his duties. The sight did not fill him with paternal pride, but with a resurgence of his old, deep-seated terror. In his mind, Nezha was not a god to be venerated, but a demonic force that had nearly destroyed him once. He saw this gathering of mortal faith not as a blessing, but as a direct threat, a rallying of power that his son could one day use to challenge heaven itself, and more personally, to finally exact revenge upon the father who had never accepted him. Acting with the same impulsive fear that had once driven him to slash open the ball of flesh, Jing took up his own divine weapon and violently destroyed the shrine. He burned the effigies, scattered the offerings, and forbade the people from ever worshipping there again, believing he had once again contained the threat of his son. This final act of paternal rejection was the spark that ignited a divine inferno of vengeance. The moment Jing shattered the shrine, Nezha felt it, a sudden, violent severing of the spiritual connection that was nourishing him. The cool, detached logic of his lotus mind was instantly overwhelmed by a white-hot rage more intense than anything he had felt in his mortal life. This was not the impulsive anger of a child. This was the calculated, world-shaking fury of a war god who had been profoundly and personally betrayed. His father had not merely disapproved of him in life, he had now actively sought to destroy his very existence in the afterlife, to erase him from the world of spirits and memory. In that moment, every slight, every fearful glance, every attempt to control or suppress him coalesced into a single, unstoppable purpose. He would hunt down Jing and make him answer for his actions. What followed was one of the most breathtaking and relentless chases in all of mythology. Nezha, blazing with righteous fury, mounted his wind fire wheels and shot into the heavens, a comet of vengeance tearing across the sky. His father, feeling the terrifying approach of his son's power, fled in sheer panic. The mighty pagoda bearing Heavenly King, a general of celestial armies, was reduced to a fugitive, running from the child he could never understand. Their pursuit became a cosmic spectacle, a divine game of cat and mouse that stretched across the three realms. Nezha, empowered by his new body and his singular focus, was unstoppable. Whenever he caught up to his father, their clashes were seismic. Nezha, with his 3 heads and 6 arms spinning a whirlwind of celestial weapons, would overwhelm Jing, who could only defend himself desperately with his own sword and martial skill. The general's only hope was his magical treasure, the golden pagoda given to him by the Jade Emperor. Each time Nezha was on the verge of striking a final blow, Jing would frantically throw the pagoda into the air. It would shine with a brilliant, capturing light, and for a moment the enchanted artifact would subdue Nezha, not through strength but through the specific heavenly magic woven into it for that very purpose. It was a temporary reprieve, not a victory. The second the pagoda was withdrawn, Nezha would renew his assault, his rage undimmed, and the chase would continue. This familial war threatened to destabilize the very heavens. The celestial bureaucracy was thrown into chaos by the sight of 2 high-ranking deities, a father and son battling across the clouds, their personal conflict disrupting the orderly flow of divine affairs. It became clear that this could not be allowed to continue. The situation demanded the intervention of the highest authorities, both celestial sages and powerful Buddhas, recognizing the tragedy at the heart of this cycle of fear and vengeance, finally stepped in to mediate. They physically separated the 2 combatants and forced a tense parley. The mediators spoke not of right and wrong, but of cosmic harmony and duty. They made Nezha understand that his personal quest for revenge, however justified, was now itself a source of chaos greater than any of his childhood mistakes. To Jing, they presented a simple, stark truth. His son was no longer a demon to be feared, but an essential, powerful god whose strength was needed to uphold the very order Jing claimed to serve. His continued rejection was not piety, it was a dangerous folly. The reconciliation they forged was not warm, not built on sudden love or understanding. It was a pragmatic, heavenly brokered truce, a divine détente. Jing was made to acknowledge Nezha's power and his rightful place in the celestial pantheon. In return, Nezha was forced to sheath his weapons and officially recognize Jing's authority as his father and as a heavenly king. The golden pagoda became the permanent symbol of this uneasy peace. Jing was instructed to always carry it, not merely as a weapon, but as a constant reminder of their forced accord and his duty to lead rather than to fear. Nezha, for his part, agreed to bow before the pagoda, a gesture of superficial filial piety that acknowledged the structure of heaven even if it could never heal the rift in their hearts. They became a functional, formidable team in the cosmic war, fighting side by side with lethal efficiency, but their relationship remained what it had always been, a partnership of necessity, a bond forged not in love, but in fire and enforced by the cold, imposing will of heaven itself. This heavenly intervention, however radical, could not erase a lifetime of fear and resentment in an instant. The golden pagoda bestowed upon Jing was far more than a simple gift. It was a divine tool for containment, a constant and very visible reminder of the fragile peace that had been forced upon them. Crafted with immense celestial power, the pagoda's primary function was specific and severe. Should Nezha's rage ever flare up again, should he ever raise a weapon against his father in vengeance, Jing needed only to toss the pagoda into the air. It would instantly emit a searing, mystical fire and a brilliant, capturing light designed specifically to subdue his son's lotus body, exploiting its one key vulnerability. This was not a symbol of trust, but of its utter absence. It was a celestial insurance policy, ensuring the son's power could never again threaten the father. For Nezha, the pagoda was a permanent symbol of his father's enduring fear and the heavens' lack of faith in his reformed nature. Every time he looked at it, he was reminded that the highest authorities still saw him as a demon first and a god second, a threat that required a failsafe. Their new working relationship was therefore the very definition of a tense truce. They were not an affectionate father-son duo, but two powerful generals reluctantly bound by divine decree to a shared battlefield. When deployed together in the service of the Zhu cause during the investiture of the gods, they formed a devastatingly effective, if emotionally cold, military partnership. Jing, the seasoned strategist, would command from the rear, his mind calculating the ebb and flow of the conflict. Nezha, the unstoppable vanguard, would become a whirlwind of destruction on the front lines, his wind-fire wheels carving paths through enemy formations, his fire-tipped spear striking down champion after champion. They operated with a brutal, unspoken synergy born of necessity rather than warmth. Jing learned to leverage his son's raw power as the ultimate weapon in his arsenal, while Nezha, in turn, begrudgingly followed his father's tactical directives, recognizing the older god's experience even if he despised the man himself. This forced cooperation became the crucible in which their relationship was slowly, painfully reforged. Day after day, battle after battle, they witnessed each other's competence and courage in a context far removed from their personal grievances. Jing could no longer dismiss Nezha as a mere chaotic child. He saw a disciplined, formidable god warrior who consistently turned the tide of battle. He watched his son fearlessly challenge ancient demons and powerful immortals, not for personal glory, but for the cause of cosmic order, the very order Jing had dedicated his existence to upholding. Similarly, Nezha was forced to acknowledge that his father's value was not in his ability to love, but in his brilliant tactical mind. Jing's strategies were flawless, his commands saving countless lives and securing victories that raw power alone could not achieve. The stubborn, fearful general was also a courageous leader who held his ground against impossible odds. The pagoda, once a stark symbol of control, gradually began to change its meaning. It was never used in anger after the truce. It remained on Jing's person, a permanent fixture, but its presence evolved from a threat into a form of ritual. In the elaborate protocols of the celestial court, their interactions became a carefully choreographed performance of filial piety for the benefit of the heavenly bureaucracy. Nezha would formally approach his father and bow. Jing would solemnly hold up the pagoda in acknowledgement and then lower it. This ritual was their way of publicly affirming the peace, of demonstrating to the watching heavens that order was maintained. With time, the hollow gesture accumulated a grain of genuine, if limited, mutual respect. The bow was no longer just an empty motion. It became an acknowledgement of a successful partnership. The raising of the pagoda was no longer a warning, but a signal that the partnership was intact. They never achieved a storybook reconciliation. There were no heartfelt conversations or emotional embraces. The deep wounds of the past were too severe for that, yet through the relentless pressure of shared duty and the countless battles they fought side by side, they forged a new kind of bond. It was a bond built not on familial affection, but on the hard-earned respect of two warriors who have saved each other's lives countless times and who have proven their worth to one another on the only field that mattered to them both, the battlefield. They learned to function as a single unit, a composite deity of order where the father's wisdom guided the son's boundless power, and the son's power secured the father's strategic designs. The pagoda remained, but it was no longer a cage for Nezha or a shield for Jing. It stood as a monument to their painful history and the difficult, uneasy, but ultimately successful transformation of their relationship from adversarial to functionally, and then respectfully cooperative. Reborn and reforged, Nezha's personal vendettas and familial struggles were suddenly swept up into a conflict of cosmic proportions. The stage for his ultimate destiny was set within the grand, sweeping narrative of the Fengshunyanyi, the investiture of the gods. This epic chronicle detailed the divine plan to overthrow the decadent and cruel King Zhu of Shang, a tyrant whose depravity had severed the mandate of heaven. To lead this righteous revolution, the highest deities appointed the sage Zhongzia, a wise but aging mortal disciple from the mystical Kunlun mountain. Zhongzia's monumental task was not merely to win a war on Earth, but to oversee a cosmic recruitment drive, identifying the souls both heroic and villainous who were destined to perish in the conflict and be canonized into the new celestial bureaucracy of the upcoming Zhou dynasty. Into this vast, heaven-shaking endeavor stepped Nezha, no longer a troubled son but a divine weapon of impeccable craftsmanship, ready to be wielded for a cause greater than himself. His arrival at Zhongzia's camp was a moment of awe and strategic triumph. For the Zhou forces, perpetually outnumbered and facing seemingly invincible enemy generals and sorcerers, the addition of a god like Nezha was nothing short of a miracle. He did not arrive with an army, but he was an army unto himself. Zhongzia, recognizing the immense value of this lotus-born warrior, immediately integrated him into the vanguard of his forces. Nezha became the tip of the spear for the righteous cause, the champion sent out to break the enemy's strongest fighters and shatter their morale. His very presence on the battlefield was a psychological weapon. Opposing soldiers would whisper his name in terror, having heard legends of the boy god who moved on wheels of fire and fought with 3 heads and 6 arms. Nezha's contributions to the Zhou campaign were not merely numerous, they were consistently decisive. He engaged in a spectacular series of duels against some of the most powerful and bizarre adversaries the Shang dynasty could muster. He faced down the fearsome Zhang Kui and his phantom steed, overcoming dark magic with pure celestial power. He clashed with the 10 brothers of the Jin school, each a master of deadly mystical arts, and emerged victorious through a combination of his own formidable skills and the tactical guidance of his allies. Each victory was more than a military gain. It was a step towards fulfilling his celestial destiny. With every demon subjugated and every enemy general defeated, he was not just winning a battle, he was proving his worth and earning his future title. One of his most critical roles was as a direct counter to the Shang dynasty's own magical allies. The corrupt king was supported by a host of powerful sorcerers who could summon poisonous fogs, unleash devastating curses, and command legions of malevolent spirits. Many of these dark arts were useless against Nezha. His lotus body, immune to soul-targeting attacks and most forms of poison, allowed him to charge fearlessly into magical maelstroms that would have decimated mortal troops. He became Zhongzia's premier demon slayer, the one sent to neutralize the otherworldly threats that conventional strategy could not touch. In this, he perfectly complemented the more scholarly and strategic approach of his commander, embodying the raw, unstoppable force necessary to counter the Shang's esoteric advantages. The war reached its apocalyptic climax in a series of colossal battles, and Nezha was at the heart of the fray. He fought alongside his father, Jing, and his brothers, Ginger and Muzha, in a powerful, if emotionally complex, familial unit. Their coordinated assaults became the stuff of legend, a terrifying display of celestial military doctrine where Jing's tactical mind directed the overwhelming force of his sons. This forced collaboration under the life and death pressure of cosmic war finally sanded down the sharpest edges of their bitter history, transforming a relationship of fear and resentment into one of professional, respectful efficacy. They learned to function as a single, devastating instrument of heaven's will. When the final echoes of battle faded and the Zhou dynasty was firmly established, the time came for the investiture itself. Zhongzia presided over the solemn, glorious ceremony on the Fengshan Terrace, calling forth the spirits of all those who had fallen in the conflict to receive their heavenly appointments. Nezha, having survived the war, was among the living honored in this grand celestial inauguration. He was formally canonized with the title Marshal of the Central Altar, a high-ranking position that acknowledged his role as a vanguard general and a protector of the realm. This was not a gift or a reward, it was a recognition of the role he had forged for himself through fire and sacrifice. He had transcended his origins as a demon child and had even moved beyond being merely Jing's son. He was now Nezha, a god in his own right, his identity and authority bestowed by the highest order of the cosmos itself. This official apotheosis marked the final and complete resolution of his journey. The rebellious youth who had once challenged the Dragon King and defied his father was now a key pillar of the very celestial order he had once threatened. His power, once a source of chaos and terror, was now sanctified and channeled into maintaining cosmic balance. He became a permanent part of the divine bureaucracy, a god to be invoked for protection against evil spirits and demonic forces. In the end, Nezha's story in the Investiture of the Gods is the ultimate story of redemption through service. He found his purpose not by suppressing his powerful nature, but by directing it toward a righteous cause, finally achieving the honor and belonging he had always sought, not from his earthly father, but from the heavens themselves. Though his legend was cemented in the epic of the Investiture of the Gods, Nezha's story did not end there. His immense popularity and formidable reputation as a celestial enforcer ensured he would be called upon again and again, even crossing over into the narratives of other great myths. Perhaps the most famous and exhilarating of these extraneous adventures is his legendary, albeit non-canonical, confrontation with the one being whose rebellious spirit might even eclipse his own, the great stone monkey Sun Wukong from the timeless classic Journey to the West. This clash is not found in the original texts of either saga, but it lives on powerfully in folk tradition and popular culture, a thrilling meeting of two of Chinese mythology's most dynamic and unstoppable forces. The context for this dream duel is a celestial crisis. Sun Wukong, having declared himself the great sage equal to heaven, has rampaged through the heavenly palace, defying the Jade Emperor and humiliating entire legions of celestial soldiers. The cosmic order is in disarray and the court is in a panic. In their desperation, the celestial authorities turn to their most reliable problem solver, the god they deploy when a situation requires not just strength, but a specific kind of overwhelming, decisive force. They summon Marshal Nezha, the lotus-born warrior whose very name is synonymous with subduing the impossible. This is not a task for a common general, it is a mission for a specialist in chaos, and Nezha is the ultimate specialist. He accepts the command not with bravado, but with the cool, detached focus of his reborn self, viewing the Monkey King not as a personal rival, but as a disruption to the balance he is sworn to protect. Their encounter is a spectacular exhibition of divine combat, a breathtaking ballet of magic, and might where two completely different styles of power collide. Sun Wukong is the embodiment of earthly, primal energy, empowered by centuries of Taoist cultivation. His body hardened to invulnerability and his staff, the Rui Jingu Bang, capable of stretching to the sky or shrinking to a needle. He fights with chaotic, unpredictable creativity, using his transformations and clones to create confusion. Nezha, in stark contrast, is the pinnacle of celestial order and disciplined artifice. He does not rely on cultivated inner power, but on the divine weapons crafted for him by his master and the flawless, impervious body constructed from the sacred lotus. He is a purpose-built engine of war. The battle unfolds in a series of escalating exchanges that showcase Nezha's incredible versatility. He begins by meeting the Monkey King head-on, his fire-tipped spear clashing against the expanding staff in blows that ring across the heavens. When Sun Wukong uses his iconic ability to multiply himself, creating a swarm of simian doubles, Nezha doesn't flinch. He simply unveils his own signature technique, manifesting his 3 heads and 6 arms. Suddenly, the single god becomes a whirlwind of coordinated offense and defense, a one-being army perfectly designed to counter an army of one. With 6 weapons spinning simultaneously, his spear, his rings, his sash, he effortlessly parries the attacks from all directions, demonstrating a level of multitasking warfare that no other deity could hope to match. Realizing brute force alone may not suffice, Nezha then employs his artifacts with tactical brilliance. He hurls his universe ring, not to strike Wukong directly, but to soar above the fray and disrupt the Monkey King's magical formations, its cosmic energy interfering with the flow of Wukong's power. He sends his red armillary Sash snaking through the air, not to bind the immensely strong Monkey King permanently, but to momentarily entangle his limbs and break his rhythm, a clever use of the tool for control rather than capture. All the while, his wind-fire wheels give him the aerial mobility to match Wukong's cloud somersaults, their fiery trails painting streaks across the sky as they duel. The fight is a stalemate not of weakness but of supreme strength. It is the immovable object of celestial order meeting the irresistible force of primal rebellion. While many popular tellings of the tale often conclude with neither combatant achieving a clear victory, the mere fact that Nezha is the one sent to confront the seemingly unstoppable Sun Wukong speaks volumes about his perceived status. He is the celestial government's final answer before they are forced to appeal to the Buddha himself. This legendary showdown, though unofficial, serves a crucial purpose in the broader tapestry of his mythos. It reinforces his identity as the heaven's ultimate troubleshooter, the deity you call when every other option has failed. It demonstrates that his power, set the product of divine craftsmanship and sacrifice, is versatile enough to challenge even the most uniquely powerful beings in existence. Ultimately, this folkloric battle elevates Nezha from a hero within a single story to a timeless, cross-cultural icon of martial prowess, a peerless warrior god whose legend is so potent it naturally expands to meet any challenge, even one as monumental as the great sage equal to heaven. Beyond the celestial battlefields and the grand narratives of dynastic revolution, Nezha's most enduring legacy is found in the quiet, everyday faith of the people. He is not merely a figure from ancient texts but a living deity, deeply woven into the fabric of Chinese folk religion as a powerful guardian, a champion of the vulnerable, and an eternal emblem of youthful vitality. This role as a protector is the ultimate fulfillment of his journey, transforming the rebellious demon child into a benevolent source of strength and safety for countless worshippers. His unique mythology, particularly his status as a perpetual youth and his fearless confrontation of overwhelming threats, makes him a profoundly relatable and potent figure for those facing their own daunting challenges. While the heavens might honor him as a marshal on earth, he is a personal patron for those in need of courage. This protective aspect resonates most powerfully with three distinct groups, each seeing a different facet of his divine power. First and foremost, he is a deity especially beloved by and for children. Parents and grandparents often pray to Nezha, asking for his divine intervention to safeguard their little ones from illness, accidents, and unseen malevolent influences. This association stems directly from his own story. Though he was all-powerful, he was forever a child himself. He understands the perspective of the young, their energy, their impulsiveness, and their vulnerability. For a child facing a frightening situation or a difficult illness, invoking Nezha is like calling upon an invincible older brother, a divine playmate who will stand between them and any harm. It is a deeply personal form of devotion, turning his might into a gentle, shielding force for the most innocent among us. The second group that holds Nezha in particularly high esteem is athletes and martial artists. They venerate him not for protection in the traditional sense, but for the boundless energy, agility, and competitive fire he embodies. His iconic windfire wheels represent speed and unstoppable momentum, qualities any runner, cyclist, or competitive driver would seek to emulate. His mastery of multiple weapons with his 3 heads and 6 arms symbolizes incredible coordination, focus, and the ability to perform under extreme pressure, the ultimate state of athletic flow. Before a crucial match or competition, an athlete might offer a silent prayer to Nezha, not just to win, but to access that superhuman state of grace and power he represents, to push their limits with his fearless spirit. He is the patron of peak performance and the relentless drive to overcome physical obstacles. Finally, soldiers have historically looked to Nezha as a celestial comrade in arms. This connection is the most direct link to his canonical role in the Investiture of the gods. As Marshal of the Central Altar, he is a high-ranking divine general, a master of strategy and combat. For those entering battle, he is the ultimate symbol of resilience and victory against impossible odds. Soldiers pray to him for protection in the chaos of combat, for the courage to face a formidable enemy, and for the strength to emerge victorious. He is a god who has faced down dragon kings and monstrous legions and emerged triumphant. His very story is a talisman against fear. This martial devotion cements his role as a protector on a macro scale, watching over entire nations and the individuals who defend them. This widespread veneration finds its physical expression in temples and shrines dedicated to him across the Chinese diaspora. While not as ubiquitous as temples to more senior bodhisattvas or gods, Nezha temples possess a unique and vibrant energy. They are often places filled with the lively spirit of their divine resident. Statues typically depict him in his dynamic, youthful form, a boyish face set with determined eyes, often frozen in an action pose atop his windfire wheels, with his universe ring and fire-tipped spear at the ready. The rituals to honor him are as active as he is. Devotees might make offerings of toys or sweets to appeal to his youthful side, acknowledging the child within the god. More commonly, they present incense and pray with a directness and passion that matches his character, asking for his help in overcoming a specific obstacle, achieving a difficult goal, or finding the bravery to confront a personal adversary. His divine power is seen as immediate and accessible, a force that can be called upon for tangible success in the struggles of daily life. In honoring Nezha, people are not just worshipping a distant legend, they are invoking the eternal spirit of the defiant underdog who, through sheer will and power, became a protector for all. Beyond the temples and battlefields, Nezha's vibrant spirit found a natural home on the stage, where the art of Chinese opera embraced his dramatic potential with breathtaking fervor. In the world of Kunk and Beijing opera, his story is not merely told. It is unleashed in a whirlwind of acrobatic precision, vibrant costumes, and thunderous percussion. The role of Nezha is a pinnacle of the wusheng, or military male category, demanding an actor who is not just a singer but a world-class athlete and martial artist. Dressed in his iconic costume, a red and gold robe, often with a lotus flower headdress and flowing sleeves, the performer brings the god-child to life. The stage becomes his domain as he leaps, spins, and tumbles across it, his movements a visual representation of the wind-fire wheels. The fight scenes, particularly his confrontation with the Dragon King, are spectacles of controlled chaos. Actors wield prop spears and rings in intricate, pre-choreographed routines, their bodies moving with a superhuman grace that makes the mythical battles feel viscerally real. The opera stage is where the legend sheds its text and becomes pure, kinetic emotion, allowing audiences to feel Nezha's rebellious energy and divine power in a way that words alone could never convey. This theatrical celebration of motion finds its still, contemplative counterpart in the rich tradition of classical Chinese painting, where opera captures the explosive moment of action. Ink, wash, and brush paintings often capture the pivotal moments of decision and transformation that define his journey. A masterwork might depict the tense, heartbreaking instant before his self-sacrifice, showing Nezha standing resolute before his terrified parents, his youthful face a mask of tragic determination. Another might render his miraculous rebirth from the lotus blossom, with delicate brushstrokes illustrating the sacred petals slowly unfurling to reveal his serene, new form amidst a misty, ethereal landscape. The contrast in artistic styles is itself a commentary on his duality. Bold, colorful New Year prints popular among the common people showcase him as a powerful protector, a symbol of good luck vanquishing demonic forces, while more scholarly, monochrome ink paintings delve into the philosophical depth of his story, exploring themes of filial piety, redemption, and the tension between chaos. Order. Each brushstroke is an interpretation, an artist adding their own voice to the ancient conversation about what Nezha truly represents. His literary journey extends far beyond the foundational text of Fengshen Yanyi, rippling outward to inspire countless adaptations that continually reframe his narrative for new generations. Throughout the Ming and Qing dynasties, vernacular stories and folktales picked up his character, often focusing on his more mischievous and heroic aspects, softening the tragic edges of his tale for broader appeal. In the modern era, this process of reinvention has accelerated exponentially. He became a star of comic books and manhua, his image leaping from panels with dynamic energy, his story retold with updated art styles and pacing for younger readers. The true explosion of his popularity, however, came with the advent of film and television. From the pioneering special effects of the 1960s, Shaw Brothers' adaptation to the lavish, CGI-filled series of the 21st century, each new production strives to outdo the last in visualizing his celestial powers, making the spectacle of his 3 heads and 6 arms a benchmark for cinematic ambition. This cultural journey culminates in his most recent and globally impactful renaissance through animation. The 1979 classic Nezha Conquers the Dragon King is a beloved touchstone for millions in China, its hand-drawn artistry capturing the myth's magic for the 20th century. Then, in 2019, the blockbuster film Nezha shattered box office records, presenting a radical and emotionally complex reinterpretation. This version leaned heavily into his identity as an outcast, a child born different and feared by society, who must choose his own destiny against the weight of prejudice and fate. This narrative powerfully resonated with modern youth, transforming him from a distant god into a symbol of self-acceptance and defiant individuality. This constant reinterpretation across opera, art, and literature proves that Nezha is far more than a static figure from ancient texts. He is a cultural vessel, endlessly refillable with the hopes, fears, and artistic expressions of each new era, ensuring that the defiant cry of the demon child who became a god will never fade from the collective imagination. The 21st century has witnessed an explosive resurgence of this ancient deity, as Nezha's timeless struggle with identity and power has found a powerful new resonance in modern media, from the silver screen to the digital landscapes of video games. This contemporary reinvention began not with a whisper, but with a seismic cultural event, the 2019 animated blockbuster Nezha. This film, a stunning visual masterpiece from director Yong Yu, did not simply retell the ancient myth. It completely re-engineered its core themes for a global, modern audience. The film's genius lies in its radical reimagining of Nezha's origin, presenting him not as a ball of flesh, but as a child born from a demonic pearl, a being literally conceived with chaotic energy and destined to bring destruction upon his 3rd birthday. This single change transforms his entire narrative into a profound allegory for battling prejudice and self-fulfilling prophecies. Gone is the confident, powerful youth of the original tales. This Nezha is a lonely, misunderstood outcast, feared and ostracized by the very community he secretly yearns to protect. His signature rebelliousness is no longer mere childish impulsivity, but a defensive shell, a performance of bravado to mask the deep pain of being labeled a monster before he ever had a chance to prove otherwise. The film's central, heart-wrenching conflict is internal. It is Nezha's agonizing journey to reject the destiny others have forced upon him and to define himself on his own terms. His climactic declaration, "I am the master of my own fate," became an instant and iconic rallying cry for a generation grappling with issues of identity, societal expectation, and mental health. By framing his story as a battle against predetermined fate, the 2019 film unlocked a universal emotional core, proving that a 1600-year-old myth could still speak directly to the anxieties of the modern world, all while delivering breathtaking action sequences that redefine the possibilities of Chinese animation. This cinematic rebirth paved the way for Nezha's expanded presence across the entire media spectrum. In live-action television, series like the 2014 hit The Investiture of the Gods and its various adaptations have delved deeper into his complex relationships, particularly the tortured dynamic with his father, Jing. These shows often explore the gray areas of his character, amplifying his anti-hero qualities. He is portrayed less as a flawless paragon of virtue and more as a tragically flawed, emotionally scarred individual whose incredible power is both his greatest asset and his most crippling burden. This nuanced portrayal makes him infinitely more relatable, a character whose struggles with anger, acceptance, and the desire for belonging mirror our own human experiences despite his divine setting. The world of video games has become another fertile ground for Nezha's legend, where players don't just witness his power, they command it firsthand. In the massively popular MOBA Smite, he is a playable hunter god, his kit perfectly translating his mythological arsenal into engaging gameplay. Players can skate across the battlefield on his wind-fire wheels, ensnare foes with the universe ring, and unleash the full fury of his multiple arms, making them an active participant in his divine combat style. Similarly, in titles like Warframe, his name and thematic essence inspire powerful warframes like Nezha Prime, embodying speed, fire, and protection. These interactive interpretations solidify his status as a global icon of cool, transforming him from a distant object of worship into an avatar of empowerment that players can directly control and master. This cross-media explosion has fundamentally shifted the cultural conversation around Nezha. He is no longer confined to the pages of religious texts or dusty tomes of mythology. He is a dynamic, evolving symbol. For contemporary audiences, he represents the defiant spirit of the outsider who refuses to be defined by their origins, the raw power of youthful rebellion channeled into self-actualization, and the enduring hope that even those labeled demonic can choose to become heroic. His journey from feared outcast to self-determined savior provides a powerful template for anyone who has ever felt marginalized or misunderstood. By continuously reinterpreting his story, filmmakers, game developers, and writers ensure that Nezha's flame never dies, keeping the defiant spirit of the demon child who became a god eternally relevant for every new generation that discovers him. Beneath the thrilling spectacle of divine combat and miraculous rebirth, the story of Nezha operates on a profoundly human psychological level, offering a timeless allegory for the turbulent journey from childhood to adulthood. He is the ultimate symbol of raw, untamed potential crashing against the immovable walls of tradition and expectation. His birth itself is a rupture of the natural order, a rejection of the passive dependency of infancy. He enters the world not as a blank slate to be molded, but as a fully formed individual with his own power and agency, immediately setting him at odds with a world that demands conformity. This initial conflict resonates with anyone who has ever felt their authentic self was too much, too loud, or too different for the systems they were born into. Nezha's youthful rebellion is not mere petulance. It is the essential, often destructive, process of a powerful identity asserting itself against forces that seek to control, suppress, or simply misunderstand it. His relationship with his father, Jing, becomes the central stage for this psychological drama, representing the universal clash between the individual and institutional authority. Jing is not just a parent, he is the embodiment of the superego, the internalized voice of society's rules, fears, and demands for order. Every attempt he makes to control Nezha, from his initial horror at the ball of flesh to his destruction of the spirit shrine, is driven by a terror of chaos and a desperate need to maintain his standing within the celestial bureaucracy. Nezha, in turn, represents the ID's raw, impulsive energy, constantly testing boundaries and acting on immediate desires without regard for consequence. Their brutal conflict illustrates a painful truth that the very structures designed to protect us, family, tradition, social order, can often feel like prisons to those whose spirits are too wild to fit within their confines. This dynamic makes Nezha an eternal icon for youth challenging paternalistic authority, whether in a family, a culture, or a political system. The pivotal moment of Nezha's suicide is therefore one of the most psychologically complex acts in all of mythology. It is the ultimate paradox, an act of supreme defiance performed through the lens of supreme filial piety. By dismantling his own body and returning his flesh and bones to his parents, he is not surrendering. He is, in fact, seizing ultimate control. He uses the system's own most sacred value, filial duty, as the very instrument of his rebellion, technically fulfilling his obligation to his parents in the most literal way possible to free himself from their authority forever. This is not a defeat, it is a strategic, shocking withdrawal from a game whose rules he refused to play anymore. Psychologically, it represents the difficult but necessary process of ego death, the dismantling of an old identity that was built in reaction to others' expectations in order to make space for a new, self-defined one. He must destroy the sun that Jing created to become the god he is destined to be. His rebirth from the lotus blossom signifies the emergence of this new, integrated self. The lotus, growing pristine from muddy water, is a perfect symbol for enlightenment emerging from suffering. His new body is resilient, purposeful, and devoid of the messy, emotional vulnerabilities of his fleshly form. This transformation speaks to the psychological journey from being ruled by emotion to being guided by principle. The hot-headed, reactive child is gone, replaced by a cooler, more disciplined deity. However, this evolution is not without its cost. The loss of his emotional volatility is also a loss of a certain human warmth and passion. This trade-off mirrors the difficult compromises of maturity, where we often gain control and focus but can lose touch with the raw, unfiltered passion of our youth. Nezha's post-rebirth struggle is not against dragons, but against the emotional detachment of his own perfected form, a poignant reminder that healing and growth can sometimes mean leaving parts of ourselves behind. Ultimately, his journey resolves not in the obliteration of authority, but in a hard-won integration with it. His forced truce with Jing, brokered by higher powers, is a powerful metaphor for achieving a mature balance between the individual and society. They do not become a loving father and son, they become respected partners. Nezha learns to channel his incredible power within the structures of the celestial order, while Jing is forced to acknowledge and utilize his son's strength rather than fear it. This reflects a crucial Chinese cultural value, that redemption and heroism are found not in overthrowing the system entirely, but in finding one's rightful, harmonious place within it. Individual freedom is not an absolute, it is a force that must be balanced with responsibility to the family, the community, and the cosmos itself. Nezha's story assures us that rebellion is not an end in itself. It is a necessary, fiery stage on the path to a more enlightened service, where one's unique power is finally recognized not as a threat, but as a vital contribution to the greater whole. But Nezha's story is not a solitary one. His legend is deeply interwoven with the lives of other powerful deities, relationships that add rich layers of complexity to his character and reflect different models of divine kinship and justice. Among these, his connection to his elder brother, Mythia, provides a fascinating study in contrasts. Unlike their other brother, Jing, who was also a disciple of the Taoist sage Manjusri, Mythia chose a different path, becoming a devoted follower of the Bodhisattva Guanyin in the Buddhist tradition. This fundamental difference in their spiritual alignment created a relationship built less on shared experience and more on complementary philosophies. Where Nezha is the embodiment of fiery, immediate action, the celestial enforcer who charges headfirst into battle, Mythology represents a cooler, more contemplative approach to power. He is often portrayed as a voice of calm reason and Buddhist compassion, a balancing force to his younger brother's incendiary temperament. Their dynamic is rarely one of close camaraderie, but rather one of respectful, divergent duty. They are two instruments in heaven's arsenal, one a scalpel and the other a hammer, deployed as the situation demands. During the cosmic conflict of the Investiture of the gods, they often fought side by side with their father and Ginger, forming the formidable Lai family generals. In these battles, their contrasting styles created a powerful synergy. Nezha would be the blindingly fast vanguard, breaking enemy lines and drawing their strongest champions into direct combat, while Mythology would often provide strategic support, using his Buddhist-derived powers to neutralize esoteric threats, create barriers, or subdue foes through means other than pure force. This partnership illustrates a key theme in Chinese spiritual thought, that Taoist dynamism and Buddhist compassion are not opposing forces, but complementary strands in the tapestry of cosmic order. They are brothers not merely by blood, but by their shared, though differently expressed, commitment to righteousness. A far more intriguing and resonant relationship exists between Nezha and a deity who is not his brother by blood, but his peer in power and spirit, the formidable Erlang Shen. Also known as Yong Jian, Erlang Shen is another celestial marshal of immense renown, a god whose legend is every bit as thrilling as Nezha's. Like Nezha, Erlang Shen is a figure who defies easy categorization. He is a powerful deity who often operates with a degree of independence from the strict celestial bureaucracy, a master of 72 transformations, and a peerless warrior accompanied by his faithful heavenly hound. He shares with Nezha a history of challenging heavenly authority for what he believes is right, most famously during his own myth where he battled his nephew, the lotus-born youth, to save his sister. This shared trait of principled rebellion creates a foundation for a deep, unspoken understanding between them. Where Nezha and Mythology are complements, Nezha and Erlang Shen are mirrors. They reflect two different expressions of a similar archetype, the hyper-competent, somewhat unruly divine prodigy. Their interactions, particularly in folk stories and modern adaptations, are often portrayed as a mixture of fierce rivalry and profound mutual respect. They are the two sharpest swords in heaven's armory, and there is a natural competitive tension between them. Who is faster, who is stronger, who can subdue a demon king more efficiently? This rivalry, however, is never malicious. It is the driving force that pushes each of them to greater heights. In the midst of a crisis, when a threat emerges that is too great for any other god to handle, the celestial court often deploys them together. Seeing them fight in tandem is a spectacle of unparalleled coordination, a whirlwind of fire and motion alongside a master of form and strategy. This partnership transcends mere tactics. It speaks to the universal need for a true peer. For Nezha, whose power often isolates him, Erlang Shen is one of the few beings in all the realms who can genuinely match him, someone who understands the weight and the loneliness that comes with such immense ability. Their camaraderie is not built on words or sentiment, but on the shared language of combat and the mutual recognition of a kindred spirit. They are allies who trust each other's capabilities implicitly on the battlefield, a bond forged in the heat of conflict against the most terrifying foes imaginable. Through these relationships, Nezha's mythology expands beyond a single hero's journey. Mythology represents the familial and philosophical ties that bind, even across different spiritual paths, while Erlang Shen embodies the profound connection found in a worthy rival, a fellow outsider who operates by his own code yet stands firmly on the side of justice. Together, they show that even for a god, identity is not formed in isolation, but is reflected and refined through the powerful presence of others. While Nezha's story is profoundly rooted in Chinese spiritual soil, the archetype he represents, the divinely powerful, rebellious, and transformative child, is a universal thread woven through the tapestry of world mythology. Placing him alongside other legendary figures reveals a shared human fascination with the explosive potential of youth and the turbulent journey from chaos to purpose. Consider the Greek hero Hercules, another son of a celestial father and a mortal mother, whose divine strength was both his greatest gift and his most terrible curse. Like Nezha, Hercules' path was marked by catastrophic accidents born of his uncontrollable power. Where Nezha's playfulness led to the death of Bing, Hercules' divine fury, induced by a fit of madness sent by the goddess Hera, led him to tragically kill his own wife and children. Both were forced to undertake monumental labors, Hercules his famous 12, Nezha his service in the Investiture of the gods, as a form of atonement and purification, transforming their monstrous pasts into legendary heroism and earning their place among the gods. Their stories are parallel explorations of how unimaginable power requires unimaginable trials to be harnessed for the greater good. Venturing into Hindu tradition, the god Krishna presents a compelling mirror to Nezha's duality, though inverted. In his childhood, Krishna is the beloved, mischievous butter thief of Vrindavan, a divine prankster whose playful antics endear him to his community. Yet, even in this youthful guise, he performs miracles that reveal his supreme power, effortlessly slaying demons sent to kill him as an infant, much like Nezha subduing river spirits. This blend of enchanting youth and latent, world-shaking power is a direct parallel. However, their paths diverge in their relationship with authority. While Nezha's rebellion is a direct and often violent challenge to his father and the established order, Krishna's mischief is a joyful, loving expression of his divine play or Leela. Both are divine children whose actions defy conventional expectations, but one embodies a struggle against a rigid system, while the other represents the system's transcendent, joyous essence. Perhaps the most intriguing comparison lies with the Norse trickster god, Loki. Both figures are agents of chaos who exist on the periphery of their respective pantheons, simultaneously serving and undermining the divine order. Loki's cunning and shape-shifting abilities, like Nezha's rebellious ingenuity, often get the gods out of problems that his own mischief created. However, the core distinction between them is fundamental to their cultural roles. Loki's chaos is often born from a deep-seated sense of envy, resentment, and a fractured identity among the Aesir gods. His actions frequently stem from malice or desire to unsettle, culminating in his role in the apocalyptic event of Ragnarök. Nezha's rebellion, in stark contrast, is not born of a desire to destroy for its own sake. His chaos is the byproduct of an untamed, righteous spirit clashing with unjust authority and stifling tradition. He is, at his heart, a force for a better order, even if his methods are disruptive. Loki is often the architect of the end. Nezha, through his painful transformation, becomes a cornerstone of a new beginning. These cross-cultural parallels highlight a shared understanding that the journey to heroism is rarely a straight line. The divine child archetype, in its many forms, serves as a powerful metaphor for the tumultuous process of growing up, where prodigious potential must be tempered by painful experience. Each culture uses this figure to explore its own values and anxieties. The Greco-Roman world, through Hercules, emphasized the concept of atoning for one's sins through great labors to achieve honor. Indian tradition, through Krishna, focused on the concept of Leela, seeing the divine in the playful and the loving. Norse mythology, through Loki, probed the necessary and destructive role of chaos in the cycle of creation and destruction. Nezha's story offers a distinctly Chinese perspective, where the ultimate resolution is not found in overthrowing the system, but in a painful, negotiated integration into it, reflecting the core cultural importance of harmony, filial duty, and finding one's rightful place within a structured hierarchy. Together, these figures form a global chorus, singing different versions of the same timeless song about the difficult, often explosive, but ultimately necessary journey of the extraordinary child learning to wield their power in a world not yet ready for them. Even within the grand, seemingly authoritative texts like the Fengshen Yani, the story of Nezha is not a monolith. His legend is a living river with countless tributaries and variations that have flowed through different regions, dialects, and historical periods, each adding its own unique hue to his character. One of the most profound debates centers on his fundamental moral alignment. Is Nezha a righteous hero, a tragic anti-hero, or something far more ambiguous? The orthodox view, heavily promoted by state-sponsored temples and later imperial patronage, champions him as an unambiguously virtuous deity. In this telling, his battle with Ao Bing is a clear-cut case of a noble protector defending himself against an arrogant and aggressive dragon prince. His suicide is a flawless act of filial sacrifice, and his rebirth is a straightforward reward for his righteousness, making him a model of loyalty and duty for subjects to emulate. Yet, a closer reading of the original Ming Dynasty novel reveals a far more morally complex and violent figure, one that later adaptations have often struggled to reconcile. The Fengshen Yani does not shy away from depicting a Nezha whose actions are frequently extreme and whose temper is terrifyingly swift. His killing of Ao Bing begins not with a noble provocation, but with a childish tantrum when the Dragon Prince rightfully questions why he is violently churning the ocean. Nezha's response is not defense but overwhelming, lethal offense. The subsequent act of tendon pulling is not portrayed as a thoughtful gift for his father, but as the impulsive act of a child who sees a fallen foe as a source of materials, displaying a chilling lack of empathy or understanding of death's finality. This version of Nezha is less a paragon of virtue and more a force of nature, a being of immense power who operates with a dangerous and simplistic moral code, making him as frightening as he is fascinating. This inherent ambiguity has led to significant regional variations in his worship and storytelling. In some coastal communities, particularly those whose livelihoods depend on the sea and its temper, the tale is told with far more sympathy for the Dragon King. Here, Nezha can be viewed as a dangerously impulsive entity whose actions nearly brought catastrophic drought or flood upon the world, a necessary but deeply destabilizing force who must be appeased rather than wholeheartedly celebrated. Other local operas and folktales amplify his mischievous side, focusing on pranks he plays on other gods or his relentless, almost obsessive pursuit of his father, sometimes portraying Jing not as a cold authority figure, but as a genuinely terrified victim of his son's unchecked rage. These variations show a community grappling with the uncomfortable parts of his myth, trying to integrate the darker aspects of his character into a cohesive whole. Modern adaptations, particularly those aimed at younger or broader global audiences, have overwhelmingly chosen to soften these edges, recasting his violence as righteous fury and his impulsivity as charming rebelliousness. The 2019 animated film is a masterclass in this narrative reframing. It recontextualizes the entire conflict with the Dragon Clan by making Ao Bing a similarly tragic figure, a fellow outcast bound by a cruel destiny, transforming a story of childish culpability into a poignant narrative about two boys breaking free from the prejudiced cycles of their elders. His quest for vengeance against Jing is given a more sympathetic motive, often rooted in a deeper emotional betrayal that modern viewers can understand, rather than the raw, almost primal anger of the original text. This evolution is not a distortion of myth but the very essence of how mythology functions. These stories are not static artifacts to be preserved under glass. They are resilient, dynamic frameworks that each generation rebuilds to address its own values, anxieties, and questions. The Nezha of the Ming dynasty reflected the tensions of a society navigating strict Confucian hierarchies with tales of explosive individuality. The Nezha of the 1979 opera film was a symbol of triumphant heroism for a modernizing China. The Nezha of the 2019 blockbuster is a global icon for self-acceptance and battling systemic prejudice. Each version is authentic to its time, proving that a myth's power lies not in its fixed details, but in its limitless capacity for reinterpretation, allowing an ancient demon child to continually find new ways to speak to the eternal struggle between who we are told we are and who we choose to become. Yet beyond the silver screen and the pages of ancient texts, Nezha's most profound and enduring presence is felt not in spectacle, but in the quiet, daily rhythms of spiritual life. His transition from a mythical figure to a living deity is perhaps most vividly witnessed during the vibrant chaos of traditional festivals. Throughout the Chinese diaspora, particularly during the lunar 7th month for the Ghost Festival or during temple fairs celebrating local patron deities, troops of performers often reenact his legendary battles. A performer embodying Nezha, clad in his iconic warrior regalia and balancing precariously on stilts to simulate his wind fire wheels, becomes a moving locus of devotion and celebration. These ritual performances are far more than simple entertainment. They are a form of sympathetic magic and communal remembrance. As the crowd cheers the divine child's victory over the dragon or his triumphant rebirth, they are not just watching a play. They are actively participating in a ritual that reaffirms the presence of protective forces in their world, invoking Nezha's power to ward off the malevolent spirits believed to roam freely during these liminal times. This tangible desire for his protection extends into the domestic sphere through the powerful tradition of protective amulets. For generations, parents and grandparents have sought small talismans bearing Nezha's image or name, often crafted from blessed metal, embroidered cloth, or inscribed paper, to be placed in a child's room, sewn into their clothing, or worn around their neck. The logic behind this practice is deeply rooted in his mythology. As a child god who himself overcame monstrous threats and celestial injustice, he is believed to possess a unique empathy for the vulnerabilities of the young. He is the ultimate celestial older brother, a vigilant guardian who understands the world of children. The amulet is not merely a symbol, it is a conduit, a constant, quiet invocation for his divine essence to stand watch, shielding the child from unseen dangers, nighttime fears, and the minor misfortunes of growing up. It represents a parent's hope made material that their child will embody a fraction of Nezha's own fearless resilience. This connection makes prayer to Nezha a uniquely personal and direct form of communication. Unlike petitions to more remote, august bodhisattvas, devotees often approach Nezha with a familiar urgency, especially when facing a seemingly insurmountable obstacle or a formidable adversary. A student facing a crucial exam might pray for his swiftness of mind and clarity of thought, channeling the focus he displays in battle. An entrepreneur launching a new venture might ask for his disruptive energy and fearless spirit to help them challenge established giants in their field. In these moments, he is not prayed to as a distant, omnipotent judge, but as a divine ally who has personally known struggle and defied overwhelming odds. His willingness to confront heaven itself makes him the perfect intercessor for those who feel they are battling against impossible systems or powerful opponents, offering a spiritual model of resistance that assures the faithful they are not alone in their fight. Ultimately, the image of Nezha himself, forever youthful, eternally poised for battle, yet with a determined calm in his eyes, becomes a universal cultural shorthand for resilience. He embodies the triumphant underdog spirit, the belief that raw determination and inherent worth can overcome any disadvantage, any label, any predetermined fate. In a culture that deeply values perseverance or kaiku eating bitterness, Nezha's story provides a divine template for enduring hardship, His journey validates the struggle itself, suggesting that the process of being forged in fire, while painful, is necessary to reveal one's true, formidable nature. From a child's amulet to a festival performance to a silent prayer before a challenge, Nezha remains a vital, dynamic force in the spiritual landscape, a testament to the enduring power of a story that affirms our deepest hopes for protection, courage, and the promise that even the smallest among us can change the world. And so we arrive at the end of one of mythology's most breathtaking transformations, a journey that begins within a glowing ball of flesh and culminates among the highest ranks of the celestial pantheon. Nezha's story is the ultimate tale of paradox, a narrative that refuses to be constrained by simple labels of good and evil. He is the demon child and the divine warrior, the ultimate rebel and the enforcer of cosmic order, the being who utterly defies his father only to ultimately fight by his side. His path teaches us that true power is not the absence of chaos but the ability to harness it. That redemption is not about erasing the past, but about integrating it into a stronger, more purposeful whole. He is a permanent reminder that those who are initially feared and misunderstood can often become our most essential protectors. What makes his legacy so timeless is its profound relatability. On a deeply human level, his struggles mirror our own. We all grapple with the tension between our wild, independent spirits and the expectations of the families and societies we are born into. We all know what it is to make colossal mistakes and to seek atonement, to feel the burning desire for approval from those who seem determined to withhold it, and to ultimately discover that our greatest perceived flaws can become the source of our most unique strength. Nezha's transformation from a feared outcast into a self-determined god is a powerful allegory for self-acceptance, offering hope that we too can define our own destiny against the weight of any label or predetermined fate. His spirit is far more than a relic of ancient scripture. It is a living, breathing force that continues to captivate and inspire across the globe. From the thunderous drums of Chinese opera to the dazzling animation of a modern blockbuster, from the quiet prayer of a parent to the focused intent of a competitive athlete, Nezha endures. He is a bridge connecting centuries of spiritual tradition with the dynamic creativity of contemporary storytelling, proving that these ancient myths are not static artifacts but dynamic, evolving conversations between the past and the present. Now we want to hear from you. What is it about Nezha's story that resonates most deeply with you? Was it his fearless rebellion, his heart-wrenching sacrifice, or his triumphant rebirth? Perhaps you have a personal connection to his role as a protector, or maybe another figure from the vast and magnificent world of Chinese mythology holds a special place in your imagination. Share your thoughts and your favorite stories in the comments below. Let's continue this exploration together. And if you're hungry to dive deeper into these timeless tales, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next journey into the legends that shape our world. Thank you for watching.